Hello everyone and welcome back to this brand new video. Now in this video I wanted to showcase the best decks from Player Store Online 1, and before we get into the decks I wanted to say that I'm not claiming any of these to be mine. I will include the description of the name of the player in the description when I include the decks, so let's get right into it. So the first deck I wanted to showcase was Bant Ramp, and that deck was from Luis Samuel Deltour, and I really wanted him to win and I was rooting for him. This deck was my personal favorite in that tournament. Now let's get into the deck, and I think he was expecting a lot of Reclamation to be in the meta, or like in the top 8, and he was right, because 6 out of the top 8 were Reclamation, and then the 2 others were Bant Ramp. So Bant Ramp is currently not the best position, but I mean, just seeing how good it is against Reclamation, I think you can play this deck on ladder, and if you're seeing a lot of Reclamation, do consider playing it. So let's get right into the deck. He's playing 3 Aether Gust mainboard, so you can see how much he's targeting the Reclamation mirror, and I mean, he could also use these against mono red in case he's playing against that kind of strategy. But the 2 of Wilt are mainly there, I guess, to deal with either Reclamation or maybe the Oven from Cat Oven. So for the rest of the ramp strategy, he's playing 4 of Crow Spiral and 4 of Uro. And Uro pairs well with the 2 planeswalkers this deck plays, which is Nissa and Tamiyo. So he pairs well with Tamiyo because Tamiyo fuels the graveyard strategy, and it also might get you and Uro into the graveyard, so that's something super cool. And Nissa is just a very good thing with Uro, because not only Uro ramps for the lands for Nissa in the future, but also if you have a breeding pool or any other forest that taps for blue, Uro is just costing you 2 lands, and that's insane. So that's a very cool synergy right there. And then Borrower to bounce any problematic threats. Usually he was using it to bounce Reclamation or the Shark Typhoon token, but we'll get into that in the future. Teferi time Raveler is the reason he was playing this deck. He said it himself. Bant Ramp is the best Teferi deck, and Teferi currently in the meta is very well positioned because it stops Reclamation, and Reclamation is running all over everything. Shatter the Sky is against the aggro decks, but it was very funny how this did not really come up just because mono red was not showing, and then all of the decks were Reclamation. Reclamation was too represented in this meta. I mean, in this player store, and that might be something to let Wizards, to tell Wizards to ban it. I'm not encouraging ban culture, but that either has to happen, or next week in the player store, people need to kind of start playing around Reclamation, or mainly just tailor their decks to beat that deck, and then the meta would balance out. Elspeth Conquers Death is a catch-all enchantment. It stops the Uro from the Reclamation decks, it stops the Reclamation itself, and then it has a bunch of other good targets set and other matchups, so maybe Mayhem Devil and the Jund Sacrifice matchup. So it's a very cool enchantment. And the second saga, the second part of the saga is actually coming up a lot in the tournament, so that's something I did not expect to happen. And a very cool thing with Elspeth is that it pairs very well with Tamiyo, because let's say, where is Tamiyo? So let's say Tamiyo is in your graveyard. On the 3rd chapter, Elspeth gets you back the Tamiyo, and then you can minus your Tamiyo to get back Elspeth and then replay it, and that kind of loop is super cool. So that's also maybe a reason he was playing 3 of Elspeth. Maybe that's why he can get away with playing 1 Tamiyo. Now the mana base is the main thing I really liked with this deck, which is he's playing 3 Triomes, and he's not only playing them for the cycling ability, although the cycling ability came up very often. He's playing it for Nissa. Now, Triome is a forest, so it taps for additional mana when Nissa is on the field, and that came up very often. Blast Zone is kind of a catch-all land. It kind of hits anything you're not able to interact with before it resolves, so it's a super good land. That's pretty much it for the land base. Don't worry about it. I'll include the deck in the description down below. Now, sideboard-wise, he was playing 4 of Glass Casket, maybe against aggressive decks, and maybe against Uro. This does shut down Uro, but I don't think he would be bringing this against Temur Reclamation, obviously, so don't worry too much about Glass Casket in that matchup. Dovin's Veto is there, I think, to just stop Expansion Explosion, and that happened a lot on stream, so maybe consider that when sideboarding. Brazen Borrower is a very good spell to side in against Reclamation, because you can bounce the Reclamation, or you can drop this early and start applying pressure. Dispute is also good against Reclamation. It stops their Growth Spiral, their Expansion Explosion. Dream Trawler, I think, is against maybe Jund Sacrifice or aggressive decks, but this did not come up very often. So, if you're playing this on ranked and you're not facing a lot of aggro decks, maybe just don't play this. And then Helios Intervention, I guess, was here against Jund Sacrifice, but yet again, the Jund Sacrifice was not really represented in the tournament, so he also never sided this in. That's going to be pretty much it for the deck for the first deck, and with that, let's get into our second deck. Going into our second deck, this is a super spicy deck, and yes, it's 4 Color Reclamation from Wushu, and I'm very sorry if I did not pronounce your name correctly, but I do not know how to pronounce it, so I'm very sorry for that. So what's the 4th color? This is obviously Temur Reclamation and something else, but what's that something else? Teferi time Raveler. And then when this happened in the stream, I was like, what? A Reclamation deck is playing Teferi? But this was actually a very good choice from Wushu, because this deck is kind of designed to beat the mirror match or to beat Reclamation decks, and he did that quite well, and he did make top 8. He only lost to Bant Ramp, and that's Lewis, and he took him out from the tournament, sadly. But let's get right into this deck. He's playing 3 mainboard negate because it's very good against the mirror match. Growth Spiral is obviously to ramp and then kind of not to let your opponent get far away with his mana advantage. Brazen Borrower is here to once again just bounce the Reclamation or bounce the Shark Typhoon tokens and apply pressure. That's also an option. Dispute mainboard is obviously telling us that he's trying to either stop Teferi or Reclamation, but Reclamation was the main deck to beat in that tournament, and maybe that's telling Wizards to do something about it, or maybe pro players will just adjust to that in the next player's tour. So that's, I think it's a bit too soon to say that Reclamation deserves a ban, but if it does get banned, I'm not going to be surprised. Teferi is the main reason he's splashing the 4th color, and it paid off very well for him. He was able to stick him and then keep on protecting him, and then he just won the game that way. Uro is just here to ramp, gain life, and then give you some late game. Reclamation is obviously here because this is a Reclamation deck, so you're obviously going to be playing Reclamation, and of course it's going to be used to play a huge explosion or just maybe cycle a huge Shark Typhoon token and then attack with it. By the way, you could also always just hardcast Shark Typhoon, then untap with Reclamation, spam a bunch of small spells, and then just get ahead that way. Mana boys, he's playing 3 Castle Vantress, which caught my attention, but this with Reclamation gives you something to do even when there's like an opposing Teferi on the field. Just scrying 2 every turn kind of puts you ahead. It's card advantage wise, it's pseudo card advantage just because you know the top card of your library every turn, so you can set up your plays ahead of time. Plains, Island, Mountain, Forest are just here for the Fabled Passage. He's playing 1 Hallowed Fountain, 1 Stomping Ground, 4 Temple Garden, 4 Breeding Pool, and the Triomes are here just to give him access to the 4 colors, and also it kind of gives you something to do even when there's an opposing Teferi on the field, because you can untap with Reclamation, then keep on cycling these, so that's an option as well. So going into sideboard, I think he was super afraid of the aggressive matchups, seeing how he's not playing a lot of things to hit the main board. So he has 4 Devout Decree and then 3 Aether Gust, which is also used against the Reclamation matchup, but it can also be used against Mono Red and decks like that. Moving on, he has a very cool combo of Tolsimir Friend, 2 Wolves and Nightpack Ambusher. Why is this combo cool? Because when you flash in Nightpack Ambusher and Tolsimir is on the field, you get an instant fight ability because Nightpack Ambusher has flash, and then every end step you get to use your Wolf token to fight something and gain 3 life, and that is simply enough to just run away with the game. And then Commands the End Game is here because it's good against maybe Temur Reclamation mirrors, because you get to do something with your mana. Now this is saying 14 out of 15, but he's also playing Tolsimir and a 3rd copy of Tolsimir Friend to Wolves. And I did not put it just because I didn't want to have this craft all button here when I'm discussing the deck, because it would have been a bit annoying. So that's going to be pretty much it for the second deck, and with that, let's move into the third deck. Going into our third deck, this is the deck that took all of the tournament and won everything, and it was piloted by Elias Watsfeld. I really hope I pronounced his name correctly. And it's obviously Temur Reclamation, because that deck was super represented in the top 8. It was 6 out of the top 8 positions again. So let's discuss this deck very quickly. The one-off opt did kind of shock me. Why would you play just one-off opt? Why not maybe 2 negate? But he's playing it, and maybe he has a reason behind it, and I just don't know it. He's playing 4 Aether Gust, and that can be used against a mirror match and against mono-red players. Negate as a one-off can come in handy sometimes. 2 Scorching Dragonfire. Now this is used usually against aggressive decks, but the cool thing with it is that in case your opponent plays Uro with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, you can Scorching Dragonfire, and then Uro goes, sacrifices himself, and then exiles himself because he dies, so make sure you keep that play in mind if you're going to pilot this deck. Growth Spiral is the usual suspect in a Reclamation deck. You're trying to ramp. 2 Brazen Borrower against the mirror match or against opposing threats just to bounce them and then apply pressure. Mystical Dispute and Neutralize are his main counter spells main board. Uro Titan of Nature Wrath is obviously what you would play in a Reclamation deck, and then you would obviously play Reclamation in your Reclamation deck. Shark Typhoon gives you something to do against an opposing Teferi to kind of kill it and do something about it. And then you have Expansion Explosion to just win the game. He's also playing 3 Castle Branches and a Blast Zone. That's something that I thought I should mention. Blast Zone is kind of a way for you to deal with Teferi in case Teferi sticks and you have nothing to do with it. And Castle Branches once again gives you pseudo card advantage to kind of get ahead that way. So that's it for the main board. Going to the sideboard, he has something very cool, which is Spectre Sailor. Now, why is Spectre Sailor good with this deck? Because it also gives you something to do with the Reclamation in case you're facing off the Teferi, because every turn Reclamation is going to untap your lands, and then you can activate Sailor's ability, pay 4 mana, draw a card, and that does not take a long time for you to simply just run away with the game with card advantage. Negate is just there against any deck that you would need against, be it Bant Ramp or the Mirror Match. Scorching Dragonfire against aggressive decks. Wilt is obviously here against maybe Jund Sacrifice, or it could also be against the Mirror Match. Jund Sacrifice, you hit the Oven. Mirror Match, you hit Reclamation, or maybe Shark Typhoon if opponent hardcasts it. Mystical Dispute is against blue decks, and especially Teferi, because Teferi shuts down their whole plan. Flame Sweep is a board wipe against aggressive deck. Chemist's Insight can be side in against the Mirror Match or against Control to kind of help you get ahead in the matchup. Nightback Ambusher is here as a flash threat to kind of disrupt the control decks, because now they have to counter it, and then if you untap, slam in something, you kind of just win the game that way. And Commence the End Game is good against the Mirror Match, because if you keep passing to each other, if you commence the end game, make a huge token, attack with it, that's super cool. Now this is not good against Teferi decks, because Teferi decks first of all force you to play this at sorcery speed on your turn, and then they can just bounce the token you make. And sadly Teferi did not let this card be a very good card in the meta, and I'm sad about that because it's such a cool card. But enough me rambling about this card, and then let's get into our 4th deck. So going into the 4th deck, and this deck did not make top 8, but it's one of my personal favorite. And then if Bant Ramp becomes a staple later on in the ladder, this deck is the superior control deck in the mirror, so maybe you can pilot that against them. I do believe that this deck is very well placed against Bant Ramp. Now let me discuss this deck, but before, why is this deck splashing 4 colors? Why is it playing green and white and black and blue? It's because of Mythos of Netroid. This card is super good because it's simply 3 mana destroy anything, and then 3 mana destroy Reclamation, 3 mana destroy Cat Oven. This kind of flexibility in the main board is something that's worth splashing for in my opinion, so that's something to talk about later on. This is a Yorion deck, so it's gonna take quite a while to cover, so bear with me. I promise I'll be as brief as possible. So Aether Gust is here again for the reasons that were previously mentioned, against aggressive decks and then against Reclamation. Omen of the Sea is here to kind of dig you into things, because you are playing Yorion, 80 cards, you need to scry a bunch of useless cards and then draw. And then it's good because you get to flicker them later on with Yorion when Yorion hits the field. Heartless Act is simply removal. Wilt is here for the reasons I mentioned before, against Reclamation and Jund Sacrifice. Veto kind of hits everything and makes sure that you are going to counter it, but it also hits Expansion Explosion, so that's something. Thought Erasure is maybe another reason for you to splash 4 colors, because it disrupts your opponent's plan and it gives you perfect information for you to play with, and then that kind of pulls you ahead in the game because you know what to play around, what not to play around. That's super cool. Growth Spiral is just played by everyone. No one wants to fall behind on Nap. Everyone wants to draw cards, put lands onto the battlefield. This card is really pushing all of the cards pushing all of the decks in the meta currently. Mythos is the main reason I think he's playing 4 colors, and it's a super cool spell. Teferi Time Raveler is just an insane card currently in the meta because it stops Reclamation, and Teferi is just broken. When you hit this off on turn 3, you simply just win the game against Reclamation. That is. Oath of Kaya is here against aggressive decks because it removes a threat and it also gains you life. Uro is once again here to gain you life, draw you cards, ramp you. Extinction Event is the board wipe that he decided to go with. Maybe if you don't want to play Extinction Event, you could play Shatter the Sky. But I think he wanted to play Extinction Event just to hit off Uro and then kind of not have to deal with him in the future and have him escape again. Whereas Shatter the Sky kind of just kills him for a couple of turns and then he comes back from the graveyard. And Elspeth Conquers Death is just super good. I mean, especially when paired with Yorion, because you get to flicker it sometimes. So it's here simply to deal with Reclamation, Uro, and then these are the main threats you would try to hit. And then you could hit any other threat against other decks, like for example Nissa or Tamiyo or things like that. He is playing Nissa, and then Nissa kind of is just a way for him to play multiple spells per turn and to also maybe bypass the whole new companion mechanic thing, because you just get so much mana with Nissa that playing 3 to get Yorion into your hand and then playing it the same turn simply becomes possible. And then she's just a good threat that's a must answer, and you can run away with the game with her with the lands you just animate and then attack with. Shark Typhoon is here because it's an insane spell, and then you can just cycle it, kill off other Teferis, kill off other things, block, save your life total, and then that's it. Mana base is the most important thing, and I'm gonna have you take a look at it. So it's 1 plains, 2 islands, 1 swamp, 1 forest, 4 of Hallowed Fountain, 2 Godless Shrine, 4 Water Grave, 4 Temple Garden, 4 Breeding Pool, and then 4 Aether Triome, 4 Zagoth Triome, 1 Raveler Triome. I guess this is just here for the cycling because it only covers 2 of his colors. And obviously Fabled Passage, the main reason you're running basic lands. Now for the sideboard, it's gonna say 13 out of 15, but once again, this is because I don't have 4 legions, and this is the other things these are the other spells he was using, so don't forget about that. So he has Aether Gust against either aggressive matchups or reclamation matchups. Heartless Act is just additional removal in case you need them. I really don't know why he's playing 4 of legions, and maybe he wants to end Mono Red's dreams, but I don't really get why he's playing 4 of this card, so maybe that's not something I would do if I get to play this deck on ladder. And sideboard will change based on the meta, so don't worry about it too much. Wilt is, just take a general idea from it, but don't like copy it 100% because ladder is different from what players expect in Players Tour. Wilt is here against for the reasons that I previously mentioned, so as well as Dovin's Veto. Kaya is here against maybe aggressive decks to gain life, so and then maybe it can hit off Planeswalkers, but I don't think we would side it in for that reason. And Casualties of War is just an insane magic card. Against any fair mid-range deck, this card is simply usually a 3-for-1, and that's enough to just run away with the game. So that's going to be pretty much it for the video. If you did enjoy, please do consider subscribing, it helps the channel a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and with that, I'll see you guys next time.